Well, hello and welcome to Quality Attempted. Today we're going Top Gun. We're going to the danger zone, and Jim and I, and maybe we'll be joined by guests. Who knows? We'll be talking about Top Gun Maverick today on the picture class review. So we're going to do this more frequently, but we're going to try to have a review conversation and talk about it. So this jacket, it's hot, so I'm going to take it off.
It's very cool though.
Well, my room, this is like wool. This is a winter jacket. Like it's like summer. First off, what did you think of the movie? Like thumbs up, thumbs down, and we'll go from there. Just a general spoiler free, right?
I'm giving a thumbs up. And yeah, I'll probably be giving spoilers because I can't help myself. But yeah, I loved it.
I liked it too. I watched the first one. Like I started it, and then I think it got off Netflix, so I never finished it, which is sad. But I've seen it, and so we saw it together in IMAX, which was gorgeous. And I saw it in the standard with my other friend. And the second time around, like it was funny because we were pinch late to it, but I was watching the opening, and I really liked the setup because it's almost. The movie was very cliche, but it leaned into it in a nice way, and it subverted you later, which I liked. It was, if I was to say in the weirdest possible way, it'd be Tom Cruise was teaching us how to make a blockbuster. And like, he's just like, and he's like, exactly like his character. He's like, oh, you think, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, he's made plenty of blockbusters. So a lot of times when they're like, oh, producers don't know what they're doing, he's like, he knows how to craft a good film or a watchable film, similar to The Rock, who does very similar films. And I thought it was Tom Cruise knocked me out of the park personally. And in terms of legacy sequels, I felt like it was his period on the legacy sequel because he did everything right, which respected the original, and it didn't seem tasteless. Like I think sometimes of certain franchises, don't want to name them, but like with the Resurrection is kind of a bit much. And the fact that they were working on this before a lot of the people passed away, like at the end, it says in memoriam of Tony Scott, which that was a cool thing, which I thought was really cool. This is not really a spoiler, but there's a shot. It's just, you don't know who's in it, but at the end of the movie, an airplane goes to the right, which I thought was really cool. It was going to the future. You usually think of like a timeline, and then when it shows Tony Scott, it comes back, and then the plane flies to the left. Like he can't go to the future without homaging the past a little bit, And even the whole letting go, like, it also relates to Goose in the first one. But this one, I was like thinking he's talking to like maybe the nostalgia generation. He's like, hey, we can grow up now, you know what I'm saying? Because there's like a generation of people that just not, their maybe emotional maturity is not there, even though they still have the same job, they have high jobs, it's just they're not there. And I don't know, I felt like it built upon it. The direction was fantastic because I know I've mentioned to you on several occasions that editing today just drives me nuts. It's like cut. Now the action climax scene, absolutely, because it's intense, but the whole movie leading up to it, it felt very human. And the whole thing, I didn't catch it the first time because I like looked down, but the no cell phones on the bar. The only time cell phones are used in the entire movie are for him to communicate with Iceman. And think about that for a 2022 movie. Usually you have the text on the screen and it's an integral part. And I thought Tom Cruise was making a stand also. This is a movie like with humans. It's like you bought those men out. Remember, he's like with the flying planes versus drones. He was just like, well, we don't need phones in this movie. These people are military and need what is around you. And I thought that was really cool. And some Easter eggs I picked up from, videos online is Jennifer Connelly was the character mentioned in the speech. In the first one, he messed around with an admiral's daughter who was Penny. And then Goose leans toward her. And like I saw that, and I was just like, oh, wow. So they were like very meticulous, and they could just do anything, which that's what legacy sequels do. You go through the script and see any name you can pick, and let's make. And the thing is, I feel it's usually cheap because it's like, oh, it's just clever. I like it if it was more organic, which it's movies. And what's the purpose is to entertain us. So that's what I think Tom Cruise did in this movie,
Yeah.
and especially Jerry Bruckheimer. Like Jerry Bruckheimer produces good movies. He's done Con Air, The Rock, which they're laughable blockbusters, but in still the same way, Jerry Bruckheimer blockbusters are always entertaining. Even the Pirates of the Caribbean and
Oh
Transformers.
yeah.
I'll say I like the Transformers movies. I can take a crap on their writing, but Michael Bay knows how to direct.
Yeah.
And I like all five of them. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but it looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, this movie was like you said, it's a blockbuster, and
Yes.
it plays to like any audience globally, which I feel like is exactly a Tom Cruise
Yeah.
thing. Is like the story structure works, like you said, there's no text messages flashing on screen. Like it's very simple. Even the villains are like these these faceless villains. It's not like you're fighting against like Afghanistan or Russia or someone. That it's typically like,
but we're outmatched too. That's the other thing. It's like we're out the American side. I guess that's the general term, which I guess is incorrect. But like first Top Gun, you have to think generationally. It was also like a more masculine dominated movie.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't really toxic in this movie. You know how they were demonstrating. I loved, like I was saying to you after, I was like, I had my arms crossed with all the cliche, and I'm like, oh, here come the new kids. And then they skirted away from it, and they made you care about them, because it was like, think of like an Ocean's 11, but the heist was the final scene. The whole movie was setting you up for that. And I was like, that was the fun. That's where the blockbuster ability comes in. And I think Tom Cruise just made a larger statement with blockbuster as his canvas, because he's like, I don't think he's done too many legacy sequels, or like Mission Impossible is a franchise. So that's why I feel like it combines legacy elements,
Yeah.
like with the new trailers, like they're coming back. And what was
do a risky business legacy.
But like, one of the things I was thinking in the context of 2022, because there are legacy sequels everywhere. And remember how we were talking about Martin Scorsese and his commentary on like superheroes? Well, I think the legacy sequel is a type of genre. And you know who directed one the same year that Top Gun came out? Martin Scorsese. He directed a legacy sequel to The Hustler, and it starred Tom Cruise. Exactly the same year.
Oh, wow.
So this is what's interesting. And one of my other favorite movies was released in America, Legend, with Tom Cruise. So these were post-risky. Yeah.
I just put that on my list because I watched half of it a few years ago, because I think I saw it when I was a kid.
Watch the director's cut. I have to emphasize that.
Okay.
And then watch it. Then you're gonna like this, because this is a movie that is crafted in editing. And it wasn't like Ridley Scott had it taken away from him. He said, I made the conscious choice to edit for America differently. So watch the theatrical, the directors, and then the US, because the US version's not as good. It's an 80s movie, but his director's cut's a timeless movie. Two different scores. So I have to emphasize, you as an editor would love it.
The score of this movie is good.
I know. They used the cues from the first one. And I think they homage the first one enough without me doing like this,
The first movie, it was like the same track the whole movie. It was just like, it was a little too much. Yeah.
My friend, every time he's like, he'd lean over, he's just like, I think they're gonna play that. He's like, brown, every time, even with the Val Kilmer scene. But I'm like, you can't. But it was hard to shake that. And he said he saw it the first time the night before we watched it. So it was like, I grew up not watching Top Gun, but I knew it more like last 5-6 years. Now, the interesting thing I thought of was Top Gun, when it originally came out, was during that, we probably won't think of this, but when it came out, it was during a 1950s nostalgia kick. Like Happy Days had started it, but in the advertisement, and I don't know why, don't ask me why, but I was looking across like YouTube and online, and remember Now That's What I Call Music, like the original series. They had one in the UK that started in the 80s, and I was just looking, and then the Time Life album series. And I remember the 50s ones, those commercials for the 50s Time Life albums with the artwork. But then I'm like, Back to the Future came out in 1985 with the whole 50s thing. And then but there was all this artwork. It was 1980s and 90s version of the 1950s. Kind of like how now we're seeing 2020, we're seeing Zillennials do their version of the 80s, kind of. And we kind of live through it, so it's just like very an idealized version of it.
Yeah, a lot of 90s cool. Movies now.
Right? Yeah, and they're just like, oh, everything should be like the 90s. And we're all like, the 90s wasn't all, it's just always the generation that lived through it. It's kind of like, it's different. And it's a rose-colored glasses thing too. But that's what I think is so cool about Tom Cruise, and the fact that it made the most money he ever made. So I'm like, he just hit Marvel status for his stature. Like he hit like 160 million in an opening weekend as a brand. And I was like, Tom Cruise personally and as an artist, I've always separated just because that's just one of those things. But his dedication's always been there, and he runs in this movie, of course. We have to say that. But
yeah, I mean, besides the run, the stuff in the planes is just incredible. And I want to look up like how much of that is practical, because I thought I read something where a lot of them are actually flying. Like,
I believe it.
Or they're in the plane and there's like a professional pilot.
With Tom Cruise on the Mission Impossible on the plane, I know for a fact he'd want to do it. And I know Tom Cruise like could have been a film buff, because if you want to see a good dogfight movie from the 30s and you'll be like, this is from the 30s, Hell's Angels. It's one of Stanley Kubrick's favorite movies, and it was I think it was directed by Howard Hawks. So if you saw The Aviator, that's the movie he's shooting when he had hundreds of cameras on planes. So if you see the actual movie, you're like, I was jaw dropped, like, because a lot of people are like, oh, the silent movies. No, and you forget that 1895 to 1927. That's about 30 years of mastery of that level, and Hell's Angels was being shot during the silent. So also the chariot scene, like from Ben-Hur, like in terms of the original silent version had 150 cameras all at the same time, because they didn't cost it. They were like whatever. But getting back to like legacy sequels, like, so Martin Scorsese had done it. So it's like interesting. It's not something he craps on, and it's an accepted genre. It's just we're seeing a lot of it because of Tron, and I feel like we've been stuck in this 80s nostalgia since we've been in high school. I feel like 80s, 90s kind of, we haven't really gotten to any style past the last 2 decades. It's kind of just lingered. And because like it was, you see 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and like you can think of Eminem and stuff, like, or like, even Blink 182. And then once the 2010s and 20s are just kind of like, what is culture? No, it's just like nothing kind of dominates. Everything's homogenized, which is cool, but it's just kind of like nothing. It's also technology has peaked to the point where you used to see the technology get better. Like, when we were kids, black and white, and now you see pictures of us as kids and they're almost crystal clear. Or it's a technology thing. But I don't know if they did de-aging, or that wasn't a big point in this movie, and it wasn't a big point to have every single character who was in Top Gun come back. Michael Ironside wasn't there, Tom Skerritt, even though I would have liked them, but I'm like, they didn't need to be there. And the football scene with the volleyball, they had to bring back the scene, and I love how they explained it, and I got it. Like, it was weird. I really empathized with Tom Cruise, because he was just like, your only motivation in so many companies, especially post-COVID, is to go move your way up. And how many people are like, you see that cliche in movies, it's just like, oh, how's the lieutenant job? I miss the streets, and then they get, they get the round stomach, and then they're bureaucrats, and then they're like, and then they appreciate it. But we don't see characters who just stay the same. And he stayed the same for 35 years, but there's an arc, which I liked. But the thing is, I was just like, wow, this is kind of contrived. And I'm like, well, it's a blockbuster. He needed to go that mission for the son. Otherwise, there was no point to that movie. I was like, okay. So it wasn't like, you need to go to Top Gun. Oh, Rooster's son just made it. And, we don't know. And the scene with Val Kilmer and Tom Cruise was actually very touching. Like, not on, like, because I wasn't a huge fan of it, but just them as actors and just as comrades, and you just see their careers, and it was beautiful. I thought it was so tastefully done.
And, totally.
And they even let him pass in the movie. Spoiler, I guess we'll get to that now. But they're like, let go, because that's the thing. I think he's trying to say the past is the past. And even with, Rooster, they're both dealing with their own issues, and it's like we're Miles Teller's generation to an extent,
right?
And all of us are dealing with different issues with our parents just because of expectations. But I like how they were just like, well, they weren't perfect. Like the Batman, remember? Like Martha Wayne, he's just like, well, this is life. It's like you can't be squeaky clean. Of course you can for politics and paper, but I think I like how it's just more accepting of that. And especially the thing I liked is this wasn't overly pushing wokeness. Like, not that it was like anything. Not saying that should be an issue, but like one of the lines I liked, he's like, "Oh, do you have a problem him calling you a man? As long as she," and then A said, "As long as he doesn't refer to you as one." I was like, I thought that was the sick burn, and
yeah, I feel like the first Top Gun, it's like there's a lot of shirtless guy scenes for just no reason. There's a lot of guys just like talking at a wall when they're somewhere else, which they did do that once.
Yeah,
it's almost an identical scene where Tom Cruise is like getting chewed out by the John Hamm, and he's like staring at the blinds while they're two, and that's like identical to the first movie, but they don't do it nearly as much. And even the football scene, like, at least like you said, this time there was like a reason for it, whereas before it was just like, it's just like get more shirtless guys like sweaty on the beach, like why not?
And the thing for me, like when they had Bob on the shoulders, showed it, and then you're like, everyone was just like, oh, Bob. And then even when I was watching, like, you know how they had the call, like the radar, so it showed the names, it literally just showed Bob, so it's like Maverick and it said Bob, and I'm like, oh wow, they like, that was him. But the fact he got Bob over, it was in wrestling, they call it a term of getting over. Say if they give you the worst thing ever and you're just such a good actor or performer, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna get out this marker and I'm gonna be Marker Man, and I'm gonna be bigger than Stone Cold. Can it happen? It's not impossible. It just depends on the performer, right? But yeah, that whole cell phone list, this movie just seems like it's like, we're gonna do the Legacy sequel, but like it's in that history of the 1986 movie was like an homage to the 50s, and this is kind of an homage to the 80s as well as the 50s. That continuing wave of nostalgia was family and people, and I thought that was so cool. And the bar was called the Hard Deck. They kept that. Like, that's so cool, and it was tasteful. It wasn't like overly fan service, but the fan service moments were there.
Yeah.
And then the flyby, when he does do it, it was so, you forgot about it, and then you're just like, kind of like, it was one of those things where, Avengers Assemble, like it took 22 movies for them to say that, but that moment, like if it was a second earlier, it would have ruined it, And but
it was pretty safe as far as which again, because it's a global blockbuster for all types of fans. Like the bully in it, forget his name. Like he's not overly a bully where you're like, and he even comes around, like he has his own moment at the end, and even the stuff with Bob, the character Bob, it's not overly like, oh my god, this guy's gonna like crash the plane or something. It's kind of like, it's a very feel good, like if you don't leave the theater and feel like pretty good seeing that, like come on.
And that's what I think Jerry Bruckheimer does. And I mentioned to you outside the theater, the opening thing was, it's Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson. They produced the first one, and Don Simpson had since passed in the 90s, and Jerry Bruckheimer changed his logo and changed his studio. This movie was made under that banner of that production, which I thought was very classy, because they wanted to, he wanted to homage the guy who got him into this business. They disagreed towards, they had a falling out, but at the same time, he's like, he was my mentor. And we've talked about Jerry Bruckheimer on the podcast, Picture Class, because of Thief and even American Gigolo. Jerry Bruckheimer's been here forever, and you could tell he always puts his money in the right place. And Jerry Bruckheimer, I just like, he always has made good movies, and a lot of times people underestimate producers. They do, because they don't know what producers do.
Right.
But, it depends. They produce talent, and depending on how they want to get movies made, like Kevin Feige, MCU producer, is a very different producer than Kathleen Kennedy, who's handling the Star Wars movies. was different than Jerry Bruckheimer or even Michael Bay or even Tom Cruise himself, you know.
Right.
And people don't think about that. It's like, oh, it's the director or the acting. It's like, that's there too. But I just think all the things worked, and Tom Cruise just showed us he's still got it, you know. And people are like, eh. And the thing is, I rolled my eyes. I'm like, what the hell do we need a Top Gun Maverick for? Because I was like, it was like, I didn't like one that much. Like, I watched it later in life. It was decent. I get the references. It's a macho movie. It came out in the 80s.
But even for a macho movie, like I never think of like fighter pilot.
Yeah.
Like, let's go like dogfighting in the sky. Like that never did it.
But it made it
me.
cool. Like, I mean, after
this was way cooler.
This movie made me want to do it. I was just like, yeah, forget drones. Let me go out there. And I think he emphasized how important the human element is just forever, even in terms of technology making movies. Like, he's like, we don't have just CGI de-aging thing. He's like, I want it to be real. And Tom Cruise is real. Like, he trains harder and works harder than most people, which
he's also got to be like, I don't know, made a deal with the devil or got some like children's blood that he rubs on his face to stay young. I don't know.
Like, I know he's dedicated, and he'll probably like sacrifice all social graces to do what he wants to do. So I can imagine him maybe not being considered the easiest person to deal with, but he's focused. And the thing is, Christopher McQuarrie, I think, has been with him since like Jack Reacher. Like, he works with the same people because they know how to work with him. And a lot of times you'll be like, oh, it was impossible to work with him. Then why have these people working with him 20 years? It's just not ever. Some people want to be coddled, and some people can be screamed at. Like, Michael Bay is an intense director, but does he make good movies? And does his crew support him? That's the important, and that's like the teamwork. That's what I think this movie pushed home. It's like, it doesn't matter how good you are in all your separate fields. I'm the best behind the computer. Teamwork. And it's like, that part is that humanity part, and everyone had differences. You know, Hangman's a cocky prick, but I like the fact that he was like, they've done this more revisionist thing with bullies, like, you know, Cobra Kai, you know, and even Amazing Spider-Man, like the bully at the end, he's just like, they show him more humane, which is true. When you beat the shit out of the bully, he's like, yeah, okay, now he has to go home and get his dad's gonna kick his ass. We don't really talk about that problem, but no, I'm just saying. But it's very one-dimensional, but I think that is one of the more interesting things. It's just when people try to overcorrect it versus, it's just like, nope, forget that. It's just like, well, this happened, so let's talk about it. And this movie was cool with it, and I really like. And especially I like Tom Cruise and Jennifer Connelly's daughter. Yeah, it was intense, and it wasn't cliche at all. Like, because I thought of something as we're growing up. Like, remember, it was always that little kid. It was a little kid and the dog. Like, whenever, like, no, but you think like that was our appeal in most. And it's like, we grew up almost to the point where the Z generation, those kids already know everything we knew. It's like, don't go, bro. It's not even like a subtlety. It's just like, we don't care, and they don't assume respect, younger generations, because no younger generation does. Because I was, you know, listening to music, and remember we're listening to Eminem. I'm like, did he really respect? But at the same time, it's a mutual thing. That's what I think these movies are doing. Because Rooster's like, you got to give me respect, and he's, you know, Maverick gets that, you know. Totally. And the way I've been talking about it, I feel like such a dork, because I'm just like, you know, Maverick and this, and I'm really talking about it positively. And I feel like anyone that's watching Picture Class or knows me personally, like, you really like the movie? I really like the movie. I did not anticipate liking it. I was just like, and you mentioned it, and I was just like, okay, but that the whole last sequence in IMAX.
Oh man, that was like an incredible, it was like action scene.
Yeah, like not Interstellar, Dunkirk. That movie was nauseating because I felt like I was in the plane, but this one, you felt like you were in a fight, and you knew the course so well. That's what I liked about the movie. You know, like, you knew it, and you kept seeing the rockets, and everything that was supposed to go wrong went wrong, just wrong enough.
Oh man.
And it was, you know, it was very Star Wars, but even when like, you know, the Han Solo moment with Hangman, but it was awesome.
Oh, once they make up, and they get and they're like, oh yeah, we got to steal the enemy plane. You're so just awesome. Like, oh, this is gonna be fucking great. Like,
yeah. I was like, they're on foot now. I'm like, okay, this just became Mission Impossible Top Gun, which is cool. And I was like, all right. And yeah, that it just had a good feeling. And like, I'm actually seeing again with my friend, another friend on Saturday, and I'm just like, Yeah, I was texting him. I was like, "Why?" I don't know why I have so many good feelings about this movie, but it feels good, and I resonated with it, especially since it's like he's the best in his field, and had he not been there, none of these people would have survived. It's just like,
Mm,
well, your career's a waste. You're not an admiral. He's like, I don't give a shit. Look at you. You're uncomfortable behind the chair. I'm still like, his physique, like he's immature clearly with the woman, but he gets over all that because that's the
right.
I don't know. It was just a good growing up movie, and it feels good. And it's kind of like it's okay to grow up, but still be you. Like I don't know. It felt like a very self care, good movie.
Yeah.
You do you, bro. That's kind of like it is. And it's just
I
like
definitely, I feel
no,
like
no,
it
but
was a good, like, bringing people back to the theater sort of movie, like just a good time. Like that was just like a good movie to see on the biggest, loudest screen you can.
yes, absolutely. The audience, because we were watching it with people, and people were like, yeah, yeah, and hearing
Yeah.
yes, because like you see the Marvel movies, you have those expectations in the end credit scene, but I'm like, this could be the end. They could do like a Top Gun 3 spinoff. They could. I don't really care. Or Cruise could just say it's dead
Yeah.
here. It doesn't really matter. But like me leaving that theater, just like, and then she's on the Porsche, very cliche shots. And because Jerry Bruckheimer has cliche shots, but the other thing is
They work.
Jerry Bruckheimer has access to the government. If you haven't
Mm,
noticed, not every movie gets government approval. And I remember on The Rock or Armageddon, they're like the U.S. Army like negotiation or like Jerry Bruckheimer always makes us look good, and I'm just like, it's true. If you think Transformers, it
yeah.
like they're human beings, but they're badass, and you just like they're not incompetent. I'm like, yeah, why would you?
Yeah,
And
that's true.
like, and this movie just it's like the Air Force joke when he's on the boat. He's like, you're in the Navy. How do you not know a boat? He's like, I land on boats. That's like one of those things. You're like, oh yeah, they're in the Navy, the Air Force, but I think it was cool, and it was it was very isolated though. It was cool,
Mm,
like the Top Gun universe. It's not like once again like there's the
yeah.
outside world. So could this even be in a different I don't know. I'm just going out there, but I think it's cool. And they kind of mentioned COVID. Remember, she was like she's sick, and then they canceled plans when the daughter came home. So I
Mm,
was like, okay, so it's
subtle.
not ignoring. No, but yeah, it's not saying it's not happening because that's a thing. How do you even mention that in films you
Yeah.
know, without it being a thing? But I love Top Gun
So what
Maverick.
are your you got a list of five
Oh,
behind you.
all right. Oh, so I put legacy sequels.
Let's check those out.
I got Psycho 2 was from 1980. Oh, I can stand up. I got the front view on Apple. Psycho 2 was made, I think, 1986 or 80. No, it's 1983. It was made 23 years after the original Psycho,
Oh wow.
Directed by Tom Holland, not Spider-Man because he wasn't born yet, but different Tom Holland. Um, Anthony Perkins returns. Vera Miles returns, and Meg Tilly's in it. Not, yeah, Jennifer Tilly's older
Mm,
sister, and she gives a good performance. Robert Loge is in it. Like very good movie, and it kind of like you think it's gonna go one way and it goes this other way. It's a very well done movie, and it's like that's unfortunate being a Hitchcock sequel. You're just like, well, shit,
right.
not necessarily.
Cool.
I put Top Gun Maverick as two just because it for a legacy sequel, it made me like it like made me like it more than the original. It made me appreciate the original's existence, but it also pushed the story further to the point where I'm like, I'm okay to champion this movie, and I'm like, yeah, it outdid its predecessor
Yeah.
because that's not usually something. The nostalgia, like Star Wars Episode 7 or Jurassic World, they're cool movies and they're really strong, but it's like it's not Star Wars and it ain't Jurassic Park. It's just
Right.
it's derivative of it, which is fine. It's just a new take. I put Tron Legacy, which shares directors, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. I love
I
Tron
found that
Legacy.
out, and we were talking about that right off camera. And Tron Legacy was one of those movies. I was like, I always thought Tron was stupid. I remember I was in Easy Video years ago, and I remember the Tron joke from The Simpsons because they was like, anybody heard that movie Tron? And everyone says no. And then I see the videotape, and I'm like, oh, what the hell is this Tron? Anybody ever heard of it? And the video store guy starts going off and like on a positive rant. He's like, oh my god, just made the 25th anniversary VHS, and then they're making a new movie soon. This was VHS, and then it took 15 more years for that to come out. And then when it did, I was so excited for it. I was just like, oh, I felt so bad because
Yeah.
I didn't know what the heck this. And this guy was
I didn't know
way
what Tron was.
Yeah, and I've played the game actually. It's
Okay.
terrible.
But yeah, I saw Tron Legacy, I think in like 3D or something.
Oh yeah,
Because I was like, I gotta go see it in 3D.
my friend we saw the movie Tron, and then we had the tickets to see Tron Legacy, so we saw like timed it out perfectly, and it was December, so it got dark early. We went right in, and I remember everyone was like Avatar. I'm like, no, I'm Tron. It'll be good later, but I put Blade Runner 2049 as 4 because Blade Runner used to be my favorite movie, but I think the addition of the story kind of ruined it for me in a way, and not I one of the things I dislike the most is when people like it ruined my childhood, like Ghostbusters, or like I couldn't care less about Blade Runner. Just for me personally, Steven Spielberg did Close Encounters, and there's 3 cuts of that movie. I've only seen his director's cut. There's the theatrical cut. There's a special edition which he added the alien ship, and then he did a director's cut which incorporates footage of both. In the special edition, he was forced to sew the ship, and then he said he regretted it because he said it's one thing you shouldn't have ever seen. And when I got the Blu-ray, because I was a collector, like which one to watch, they had a freaking like poster with a map of the differences. I'm like, and as a first-time viewer, I'm like, what do I watch? I don't want to waste my time seeing this movie 6 times. So I watched the director's cut, and then I was watching him talk about the choices because it's similar to a 70s version. But he's like, I should never shown the thing because he's like, it takes away the imagination, kind of. And then once Blade Runner, like you saw, there was a world and there's wars, and now it's just like, okay. And it's going to be like more CGI people running at CGI people. This time it's personal. The ends in the 7th movie, that's 2 parts. So it's like, okay. And I understand this is blockbusters, but it's just predictable. So
yeah.
And 5th, I put Staying Alive because I'm going to sell everyone on this Sylvester Stallone directed sequel to Saturday Night Fever that has nothing to do with it. Its legacy is 6 years later, but it is my guiltiest of guilty pleasures. But we'll review that eventually at Picture Class. But yeah, I highly recommend seeing it. I think going to the theater, even if you're with people who are like, fuck yeah, like, because I'm seeing it a 3rd time with someone's a fuck yeah guy, and we've seen it. And if the people are into it, sometimes, like, if you go, I don't know, when you go into movies and like you don't like talking, it might not be the movie for you. Sometimes this is a movie where the audience is part of the movie.
Yeah.
And because we had fun watching. I remember you were just like, what's gonna go on?
Yeah.
I was just like giddy. I don't know. Thank you so much for joining Jim and I for our post Tom Cruise Top Gun just love fest. I'm hoping to do an essay about this, and I'm gonna see it again. So check out our TikTok. I'll probably post a bunch of stuff on there about the movie at Quality Attempted. You can find us at anywhere, just at Quality Attempted. That's pretty much it. At Quality Attempted at anywhere.